Welcome back, everybody, to Recruitment Uncensored. I don't need to keep introducing myself every fortnight because you know who I am. I'm Kate, the host. I've got Sai on with me this morning as my guest. Now, I know when I did the last show, I mentioned the next show and the guest and the title, but that hasn't ended up happening. So I've got a guest on today that's different. It's not mental health related. I will cover off men's mental health again. I don't want you to think I don't care about it or I'm ignoring it. But we are going to cover off, for me, I'm really interested in this subject because I spend a lot of time in agencies. I know obviously you do, Sai. And that efficiency piece is massive. We were talking about this before we went live. Whatever size of agency, 2 people to loads of people. So I'm really excited to get started today on this subject. So how to run your agency more efficiently. So first question for you, which I think is a good place to start. Some people might be like, well, I think my agency is quite efficient. Like, how will you know if what you're doing, your business, actually needs improvement?
Good question. Thanks for having me on, of course. Roles and responsibilities and accountability are usually good things to look at when you're thinking about, is your agency running efficiently? If you find yourselves constantly asking questions like, well, who's meant to be doing that? Or who's meant to have done that? And there's always little bits and pieces falling by the wayside. That's usually a sign of inefficiency that comes from org structure, roles and responsibilities. Other things to look out for is, are you doing things a million different ways and then getting various different results? If it's a case of, if you aren't able to very clearly say, this is how we do it and this is the expected result, that's usually a sign of inefficiency, and that comes from a lack of process.
Yeah. And I think, like we were saying, weren't we, that actually this is sometimes, you'd think the less people, that the more that wouldn't happen. But actually, when you've got less people, it's kind of like, oh, well, I'll just do this and I'll do it. Like, people just do things without actually there being those boundaries.
Yeah, 100%. And if you are less people in your agency and you're much smaller, you have less resource. And ultimately, if you have less resource, you need to be very, very thought out about where you're pointing that resource. What are folks doing every single day, every single week? What are people responsible? What are people accountable for? Accountability equals efficiency. I think that's a really, really good thing to think about. Like, who's accountable for making sure these things are done for the business to operate efficiently?
Yeah.
Comes up a lot.
I suppose you get people a lot like, well, I didn't, that wasn't my responsibility.
Yeah. Slopey, and we've all worked with folks before who have slopey shoulders, and things roll off very quickly, which is why it's even more important, I think, with folks feeling much more positive about where we're moving in terms of market conditions, and aside from all the crazy things that are happening in the world, the recruitment sector, most folks feel like it's bouncing back somewhat and seeing green shoots. I think it's even more important now to make sure that as things get better, we get better efficiently and do it with efficiency in mind. Efficiency is usually an afterthought, right? Things go Pete Tong and then everyone's like, oh man, like, where's this money going? Where's that money going? No one ever really looks at what they're spending money on or how much they're spending on certain things until things go wrong or the deals dry up and the bell stops ringing. I actually think that if your agency is feeling that bounce back to a certain extent, or you're still in that tough time at the moment, making sure you look at your roles and responsibility, who's accountable for what, will help with efficiency.
Yeah, it's an important time to do it because as and when it gets a lot busier, then you've got all your ducks in a row and everything's being done in a way that is going to benefit the business and its growth.
100%.
I'm so glad the market's picking up.
I
think we all are, aren't we?
Yeah, we all are. I think we all are. The funny, honestly, last year when I set up Embedded Ops, I think we spoke about it when we had Nando's recently, but the setting up a business to go and get money out of recruitment agencies when recruitment agencies weren't making as much money as they had been for the previous record 2 years felt like an absolute mentalist move. But actually, I think that some of the stuff that I speak to agencies about, like efficiency, roles and responsibility, productivity, data and activity, these things are, with a small bit of time and thought, you can drive efficiency from various different ways. Like every product, every tool that you're using, every way of working can be looked at to be done more efficiently, for sure.
Yeah. I forgot to say at the start, for anyone watching, any questions you've got as we continue chatting, just check them in the comments and I'll bring as many up as we've got time for. Anything that we don't get to cover off, we can jump on the LinkedIn event after. I can tag sign anything that's definitely, well, all of them will most likely be questions for him because you're the go-to person on this, so I can make sure we get them answered. So if you're watching and there's anything you want to know, check it in. So we know obviously what to look out for to know if the agency is running efficiently, but then, okay, if you identify that, then where is the best place to start to kind of get things working more efficiently?
Yeah, this is an exercise. What I'm about to describe is an exercise that I've been through with a couple of customers since launching Embedded Ops. I've also done it whilst being the ops manager and ops director at businesses when we've kind of been like designing an operations function. So specifically just the ops function. We were looking at, who's going to need to do what. We were expanding into a new contract market, which came with lots of contractor care and compliance. And we needed to go through an exercise to understand, well, who, with our limited resources of 3 people in our ops function, are going to do it. And actually, it was a really good way to create a business case to go and hire an additional ops person, because this exercise throws out a bunch of things that someone else could be doing or an additional headcount could help with. So if we think about accountability equals efficiency, accountability will no doubt come from folks having roles and responsibilities clearly defined in their job descriptions when they join, but also everyone else being aware of who's meant to be doing what, like who do I go to for this, who do I go to for that. So if we keep that accountability equals efficiency piece in mind and think about roles and responsibilities, that is the place to start. A lot of people I speak to are like, well, here are my job descriptions that we've got. And more often than not, someone's been working in your business for 3 years. The job description that they got when they first joined as part of their employment contract is probably completely different to what they're doing now. It just happens. We don't update them. And, good on you if you are updating them. Well done. Probably good HR practice there. So what I recommend getting people to do is list the people that work within your agency. So you might want to have all the recruiters, or maybe you just go delivery consultants, senior consultants, managers. So you can just group the recruiters as opposed to listing each individual person out. And then I'll have my ops team and my owners. And what I do is I'll list the stuff that they do daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly. So for a ops manager, they might be doing CRM quality checks daily. So that'd just be a daily task that they got to do. And that very much so for me is a sales ops type activity to make sure that the database is clean. So that sales ops category would get a color code. I'm happy to also ping out a template for this to anyone afterwards who might need it. It's literally the most simple thing. I use Excel for it because I like to be able to drag and drop the cells.
If you'd like it pinged over to you, actually, whether you stream this after, because you can stream this after on LinkedIn or YouTube, or you're watching it live, maybe check a yes in the comments, and then Si will know to send it out to you.
Yeah.
Or drop him a DM. That's probably the easiest way, actually.
Yeah, perfect. And an email address is great, so then I can send you more marketing materials later on as well.
Good little sales tool there.
Super simple exercise. Like you just go through, list it off, and sometimes you might think that it's too little, but my recommendation is to drop everything in there as it comes into your mind. What you'll find is once you drop that big dump of things that you believe you do daily, weekly, quarterly, and monthly, you'll be able to get rid of a few because they'll overlap, and technically this is one activity, so you can merge them and things like that. But then it's about color coding that one into various categories. So is it finance? Is it compliance? Is it ops? Is it BD? Is it candidate sourcing? Is it marketing? Making sure that you've got a color code for that, and doing that for every single person within your organization. The ops ones are the really interesting ones to look at if you've got multiple operations headcount, is where that crossover is, because I often find inefficiencies within who has ownership of operational responsibilities. Once you've done that, that's your as-is roles and responsibility currently right now. Now you can go and play with another tab and look at shifting things across. So if you have hired someone who is meant to be the finance manager, it would make sense that everything that is color-coded finance should sit under them. So if you find something finance related is sitting with one of the founders, like making the payments on the bank and things like that. It's like, it's 2024 now. You don't need to pay all the invoices out of your agency. Just let your finance person do it. Things like that. Yeah. We're so resource strapped as well that we find ourselves doing things because we've always done them, and actually being time poor is is probably the biggest pain point most people have. So yeah, rejig all the roles and responsibilities, get them color coded, make sure that the right colors are sitting under the right people, and make sure that if you have an admin color in there, try and minimize how much admin tasks and responsibilities are sitting over with your recruitment team. I'm a firm believer that there is no chicken and egg in a recruitment agency setting. It is sales first and then ops and back office after. There's no invoice to send unless someone's done a placement. It's just firmly what I believe in. And therefore, the three pillars that embedded ops is kind of built around is enable, operate, and improve, which are some modules that I'm hoping to roll out training for. But that first one, enable, the rest of the business exists to help enable the business to generate more placements. So actually taking admin away is enabling them to do their job and have more time on the tools to go and make placements. So a big one for me is admin stuff, get that away from that sales team as much as possible. I'm not talking about coding candidates. That's a recruiter's job. I'm talking about potentially formatting CVs or like filling in forms for factoring companies or finance companies with all that sort of information, that kind of stuff.
And I think I experienced that firsthand as a consultant, because when I joined the last agency I worked for, I'd come from an agency where there's 360 recruiters. We did everything, like all the admin, everything. And this is like I know I look really young, but this was quite a long time ago now. So when I joined my last agency, they had they were called support consultants. They did admin for us. So they would add candidates to the database for us, copy and paste our notes in, book in interviews, send CVs to clients, just all that field calls. So the calls would come into the office and so our time, basically the premise was, as consultants, we could be doing the money making activities. Our time wasn't wasted fielding calls. We had mobiles, so people could contact us directly, but they were booking in our interviews for us, for our candidates. If you think, I know sometimes, like when you were talking, I thought actually sometimes, like maybe the agency owner going on the bank and paying people, okay, might not take that long and it's pretty straightforward. But actually, when you add up all the time, actually all those things being done by somebody else, you said about being time poor, creates so much more space for you to do other things.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing as well is, if you're an agency owner or founder on, listening on this, or you're an operational leader and, you're thinking about how much time and effort is spent doing things, once you have, or when you're doing your as is, so you might find yourself with a mixed mash of colored tasks that sit underneath people, just put minutes next to it, honestly, or like an hour or decimal hour point next to it, and have a look at what that looks like. Because when you look at some of the tasks, if it looks like, well, all right, we've worked out what you do with 4 hours of the week, but we've got 40, so what else is happening? It's always a good way to go and probe and find more stuff. What you'll then find is actually that the best one that I experienced was an ops executive who, like, God bless her, was dragged. She was invited to every single meeting that happened in that business, every single meeting. And so when we looked at her roles and responsibilities, she wrote attending meetings. And I was like, wow, okay, it's not really a responsibility, but talk to me about that. She was like, well, here's my diary and here's all my recurring diary invites. She had like 3 to 4 meetings per day that she had to go and attend.
Oh my God.
She'd get pulled into one division, would be running a meeting, and they were like, oh yeah, we'd like an ops person there to sit in on our team meeting, and this division would want them, then the finance would want them, and then the leadership team involved her in some of their meetings because they were training her to become a bit more senior and so on and so forth. So actually, when you actually looked at the qualitative nature of work and responsibilities, or what she was accountable for, was very little. Spent a lot of time in meetings, and she wasn't even the person that was writing up the notes and issuing the minutes.
Well, so how did she get anything done?
Honestly, and then actually perceived value. If your agency was going through a tough time and you think, oh gosh, we need to have a reduction in force or look at some redundancies of some kind, she'd have been the first person that would have been on the blocks to go, because actually you do the least and we can afford to not have you.
Exactly.
Is that fair on her? I don't think so. I think she's just unfortunately, that was a result of just poor time management and poor roles and responsibilities shift out. So yeah, that's a good one. Look how many hours.
Yeah.
on your list takes, and ask yourself, do I have a bit more in my locker, or actually am I overworked? And the example I was talking about, the agency that I worked at, when we were trying to work out how to deal with the addition of loads of operational responsibility for this contract book that was going to require lots of compliance and contractor care, created a new color. And eventually what we realized is that most of our ops team had about 50 to 60 hours worth of work a week that they were getting through it pretty well. But we knew what the long-term outcome, or the mid-term or long-term outcome of that would be, is burnout, or just getting the arse ache with it and fucking off, basically. So we ended up realizing that we could create another role. And actually it was a very easy business case, because we knew it was required for the revenue that was coming in to have a person doing it. And actually overall the ops function would be better placed to serve the recruitment business.
And to save the sanity of everybody else.
Yes.
Not doing all those hours.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So I know you're big on data. So I think a lot more people are now, but there's still some people, again, if they don't know they're not efficient in the first place, I don't think data would even be coming to mind, would it? So for you, like, how important is data when it comes to efficiency?
So we talked about kind of efficiency from a roles and responsibility, accountability, what are people doing perspective. Data for me is everything. Data-led decision-making is not a new concept. People have been talking about that forever. I think every analytics platform sells itself by saying that's how you should make decisions. And I agree. I think you should firmly make most of your decisions on the data that you can see in front of you. In some instances, there is a little bit of a hearts and minds factor to consider, but more often than not, I'm a data-first decision-making process person. So when I talk about data, there's sort of performance data, and then you've got like the recruitment data that you'll have. So you've got like data around your agency, which I'd throw in things like your CRM quality. So agency data, or agency quality data, or agency standing data. I'm not sure how I would want to categorize it, but how many people in your CRM are coded. Because actually, if you have gone through the motion of adding a candidate to the database, which I know can be quite easy with Chrome widgets and so on and so forth, it's like 2 clicks and they're in. But if you've gone through that process and put them in, but not coded them, and not even added a CV, maybe it's just a LinkedIn profile, which is pretty sparse anyway. That person is just
so annoyed.
That person is never coming up on any searches ever. You just have to remember.
It's pointless. You might as well not add them.
Exactly. So actually that exercise is just such an inefficient exercise. So for me, that's one example of where you can try and drive some efficiency through your data. Like, so you can go run some reports and look at how, last 3 months candidates added, what percentage have been coded, who's the biggest culprit, who hasn't done it, do they understand, do some education around why it's important. Like, if they're not coded, then you're not going to be able to find them again utilizing the code search, especially not if you've bloody put a LinkedIn profile in place which just has 4 job titles and the university that they went to. They're not coming up on a Java search. So yeah, that's one kind of example one on like the agency's data that I like to talk about. And then things like the revenue breakdown. So what we often find is, especially if you're multi-sector or multi-division, or if you've got individuals doing different types of roles or work or recruitment in your agency setting, you'll find that one might make loads of money and it's just straight up, they're just a perm agency, they do it all themselves, and actually your finance person comes along and just sends a couple of invoices for them a week, and that's a really light touch support function, and that's a nice efficient way of working. And then you'll have another desk where you might have 3 people really sapping time from your ops team because they need them to fill in RFP docs and help out with various different questionnaires from potential clients, and actually they don't convert and they don't make money. So looking at the breakdown of your revenue by consultant, by desk, by division, by geo, by sector, by type of recruitment is one thing. And then I recommend adding another layer, and like, what is the actual operational cost behind doing this? Most anyone that runs a contract and perm business will know that their contract business obviously costs a lot more money to run financially, with funding and also the time of all the invoices and
as well.
Yeah, exactly. But even within just perm businesses, you'll find some perm desks will require no support whatsoever, and they can go off and generate tens of thousands of pounds per month, whereas others don't. And it comes down to the person and how they operate, and it's a good way to look at it and going, actually, they made more money, but they cost and take more time operationally. So the actual true profitability of a desk really comes out, how efficiently they do recruitment and generate money. The flip side, which is performance data, is what you can do to move the needle on the desk, for consultants. So all the old classic ones, I'm not here to reveal anything brand new, but recruitment ratios. Like I was in one of my clients had their monthly meeting yesterday, and we were looking at they always put the recruitment ratios on the slide. And they work a really niche Nordic tech market, and they're so niched out that they're disappointed that their CV sent to interview ratio was 1.6. And they were really disappointed with that, because normally they're a 1.2 business. And the way that they think, and I love it, and this is nothing to do with what I've done. They were like this before I even met them. But the first thing they were like is, how do we just improve that? Like, why have we gone from 1.2 to 1.6? What could have caused that? Like, trying to find out what the problem was, or what it was that triggered this drift in.
Well, you're nipping it in the bud then, aren't you? Because some people might say, well, that's still good, or there's only a slight difference, but why is there a difference?
And when you actually consider the fact that, you might be the number one go-to supplier to them or to that sector, is mainly because of the quality of what you send, is the reason why people engage with you. As soon as you see that little shift out, you do want to nip it in the bud and jump in front of it straight away. But there are so many efficiencies. There are lots of efficiencies to be found within data, within recruitment agencies. So looking at things like system, CRM, data quality, how much is coded, what's, how much of stuff is filled in, and so on and so forth. But particularly in the rec ratios, like looking at not just your recruitment ratios of the CVs to first interview, second, further, final, offer, close, but also looking at like the data behind your telephony, and then even one beyond that is like LinkedIn.
I was just thinking that, yeah.
And then, like there's the journey from like a LinkedIn profile view all the way across to money on the board. It's a whiteboard session that I do with ops teams, especially if they've not done recruitment. I love to go through this with people that haven't done recruitment, so that they can really understand that we spend a fortune on LinkedIn. So we need to look at the reports and understand the usage and drive best practice to drive ROI fundamentally. But what does a profile view tell us? What do searches performed tell us? What about, what's the link between searches performed and messages sent? How can we improve response rates? Like everything that's done on LinkedIn, absolutely everything that's done on LinkedIn is to, at some point in time, generate a telephone conversation or a web meeting of some kind, right? There is a conversation that needs to happen. So eventually that LinkedIn data that you can see from the usage reports should flip over to telephony data, right? You should be going from there. All this LinkedIn activity has generated 10 booked calls with top tier candidates this week. And then you should see the 10
hopefully.
Then you should see the 10 calls. Then you should see each call's 45 minutes. And then, then you start seeing that go through. And then you spend that much time on the phone speaking to hopefully relevant candidates. That should translate into CV sends, like working out that journey all the way through. I know it sounds like the most simplest and easiest thing, but ops folks,
I bet you so many people don't do it, and I think it's like, oh yeah, LinkedIn Recruiter will do that. It'll be a great idea and it'll improve everything. But if you're not looking at what's the activity, it's when you're just scrolling through the feed every day, but not actually doing. And I think what I was thinking then when you were saying that stuff around like the telephone stuff, the LinkedIn usage, how I see as well it helps efficiency is then you identify things like training needs. Okay, why aren't they using LinkedIn enough? Is it because they don't know what the fuck they're doing on there, or the phone calls? So for me, it's like, how long are they on the phone for? What's the outcome of those calls? Because if they're just dialing and not getting anywhere, is it because they don't know how to open up a conversation with a candidate or a client? Or so yeah, it creates it has like a positive domino effect then, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. The best thing when you look at those metrics, like, do it once a month, once a quarter. It can be a bit of an effort to pull all of that data into one place. But if you're able to do it, to just assess your business for a quarter or over a half year, H1, maybe look at H1, what you'll no doubt find is that things are only ever a skill issue or a will issue. And I just don't think will issues should exist in recruitment. Like you don't work for your base salary, so you should be trying, right? You should be trying really hard to make as much money as possible. Should be applying yourself, shouldn't just be not hitting your targets or KPIs or whatever it might be that you have within your business. But like, if it's a skill issue and it's just like, wow, someone is like, they're running hundreds of searches per month because they're really playing with the filters to find that golden nugget candidate. And then they're viewing a sensible number of profiles, not 10,000, but a sensible number of profiles. And then the ratio of the messages they're sending versus the profiles makes sense, that they're actually not just spamming loads of people, and then it's their response rate that's low. It's like, right, we need to work on what you're saying to these people, because you've done all the front end work, but you sent the messages and no one's replying. So we can review it and work it back there. But as long as you can see from your data that it's not a will issue and it is a skill issue, then you can look at, like you say, training. Sometimes it's coaching. Like, so the cool stuff, sometimes you can like, someone needs to listen in on calls. Like, I love the fact that most people use
it. It could be tiny little things to tweak sometimes as well.
I love that the new age of telephony providers all have call recordings. I think call recordings are probably like one of the most powerful things that has come along to change.
Sometimes I can listen in live with some of my clients. They've got these amazing phone systems and apps and all of that stuff, where I can literally, I don't even need to be sat next to the consultant. I can just listen in and live hear what's going on. It is amazing.
Yeah, it's so good. I saw one the other day where you can then whisper to the consultant and the other person on the phone won't hear it. I think they call it whispering as a feature. So you can like point them whilst they're live on the call. I don't know how I'd feel about.
I find it puts people off. Yeah. But yeah, it's just mad what you can now do with it. I'm going to do a quick roundup of the next show, and then I'm going to come back to you so we can carry on, because I know we've got a top tip from you, which will draw back into what we were covering off then. So next episode, I do this every bloody week. I don't write down the date. It's in 2 weeks' time. What is the date in 2 weeks' time?
21st.
The 21st of August. There we go. The same time. You think after doing the show for over a year, I would do this by now, every time. So 12:30 on the 21st. So I've got Laura Hayter joining me. I've known Laura for a long time. She actually goes to my gym. She used to be a recruiter. She had her own recruitment agency. Now she's a very successful women's fitness and nutrition coach. She works with a lot of very high-flying career women, helping them balance everything, basically. So I thought it'd be really good to get her on and to talk about this balance. Like, how do you achieve it? Because, I mean, it's not even just an issue with women. Like, I think we all struggle, don't we? Especially business owners, when we've got high-end roles, to juggle. We were talking about this before we went live, just to juggle life. It's difficult. So she's going to be coming on. As you normal, the week before, I'll get that event live and start inviting people to it. But that is our next show. Okay, so let's come back to you for your top tip. We've got a couple of minutes. So prioritize roles and responsibilities. I know we've touched on this slightly, but why is this like such an important thing for you?
I think because it's the starting point for where you can. It's the most obvious starting point. It's the most obvious starting point and mechanism to push down accountability to folks. I think from a recruitment agency perspective, recruitment consultant perspective, in this day and age, you have to have a career progression pathway, because everyone says that they're super ambitious and wants to get promoted in recruitment. So you should hopefully have that in place anyway. But within that, you should have the criteria. And on that, just a side note, criteria for promotion should be three-pronged, not just revenue. It should be about being a good corporate citizen as well. Having that in there will help drive operational initiatives. But that structure and roles and responsibility, what increases do you have in roles and responsibility as you move up over on the recruitment side, but specifically on the ops side, and you as an agency founder, what is your responsibility? How many calls do I need to jump on every week? How much of this do I need to do? It's just so important to know who is doing what, and ultimately when things go wrong or things aren't getting the desired outcome that you want, you know who to speak to, and you can start reviewing if it's a skill issue or a will issue. And then if it's a skill issue, you speak to the trainers of the world or the consultants of the world.
Like us.
If it's a will issue, you really need to think about performance management processes or revisit who you're hiring in the first place. But that is a really broad stroke top tip there. But if you want to know more about how to tackle it, you can obviously reach out and talk to me some more.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to come to as well, is that, look, if you're listening to this today and you think, right, I need some support with this, or I've got questions, LinkedIn's the best place to reach Si. So drop him a DM if you want that. It was a framework you mentioned, wasn't it,
Your
earlier?
template for the roles and responsibilities, yeah.
Right. So if you want that as well, just drop him a DM. He's on this event, so it's easy to connect with him. You can obviously keep chucking your comments in there as well. If you want to go back and watch, I think it stays on LinkedIn for a couple of days, to be honest with you, but you can go onto YouTube and watch this as much as you like. So yeah, we were talking about podcast before we went live. You can listen to this as many times as you want. It will keep you entertained for days. So we're back. But if you've got any, what I would say is connect with Si, ask him questions. Let's start to make all our agencies, to solve this problem of efficiency. It's because it's a big one. But thank you so much for coming on today, Si, as a guest. We'll definitely get you back on as well, because I'm sure this will not be a problem that's really ever solved with agencies.
Thanks for having me.
But thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Take care. Bye.